Hello again and welcome to another Mordian Glory bolt action video. In today's episode we shall be casting our ever critical eye over another unit from the armies of Germany. In our crosshairs we have the largest and heaviest of the German close support tanks. Based on the Tiger 1 chassis and mounting an enormous 380mm rocket, it's time for us to take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of the infamous Sturmtiger. As is tradition, let us begin with a brief overview of this unit. The Sturmtiger is a super heavy tank. This means that it has a damage value of 11 plus, making it exceptionally durable. Whilst it's based on the Tiger 1 chassis, which itself has a damage value of 10 plus, due to the fact that the Sturmtiger has got that huge armoured casemate on it, it is actually upgraded to a super heavy tank. This puts it on par with things like the King Tiger and the Mao, both of which are notoriously difficult units to knock out. However, with a great damage value comes a great point cost. Sturmtiger can be taken as either inexperienced or regular. Interestingly, there's no option to take this tank as a veteran. If you take it as inexperienced, it costs 384 points. If you take it as regular, it costs an eye-watering 480 points. In a standard 1000 point game, this thing is going to take up nearly half of your available points. In terms of its weapons, the Sturmtiger is mounting one casemate mounted forward facing rocket mortar and one forward facing hull mounted MMG, and there are no weapon options or upgrades you can give this tank. No pintle mounted MMG for example, or Schutzen to go on the side. For its special rules, the Sturmtiger has Tiger Fear, which I suppose is kind of obvious, but then we get to the main one, which is Rocket Mortar. This is really the defining feature of this vehicle. The Rocket Mortar is treated as a heavy howitzer and cannot fire to long range. On the other hand, the devastating blast of the 380mm rocket mortar allows the player to re-roll all dice that fail to score damage for the blast, as well as D6 for the number of pin markers. In addition, it inflicts 4d6 hits on targets inside buildings. This is a phenomenally powerful shot. The heavy howitzer uses a 4-inch template, which is the largest one in the game, and you will reliably be able to cover the entirety of a 5-man squad. And if your enemy bunches up even a little bit, you'll probably get most, if not all, of a 10-man squad as well. On top of this, it has a +4 penetration modifier, meaning that even veteran infantry will be killed by this on 2s. And don't forget, if you fail to score damage when rolling for the wound, you get to re-roll it. That is part of the rocket mortar. So any infantry that gets hit by this thing is going to be killed on 2s re-rolling. Now, as far as I can tell, this damage re-roll extends to vehicles too. It has no stipulation in the rocket mortar entry about it only get re-rolls versus infantry or against non-vehicles. So with that pen +4, when you're shooting at enemy vehicles as well, you'll also get a reroll. Now, a lot of vehicles are still going to be tough to wound with the +4 pen. For example, medium tanks will only get glanced on a 5 and penetrated on a 6. But with a full reroll, this makes the Sturmtiger actually pretty good, pretty reliable at going after other vehicles up to and including those of medium weight. But even if you don't destroy the enemy vehicle, you're going to cause it all sorts of headaches with the D6 pins that you put on it. On average, that is 3 to 4 pins. Any bolt action player with his salt will tell you that the moment a unit gets that amount of pins on it, it is due for a rally. So if you don't destroy the enemy unit, you can still take it out for a turn, forcing it to rally. If you get on the higher end of the pins here, you get 5 or 6, you might even force your opponent to have to rally for more than one turn. Finally, while often overlooked, it's important to not forget about the 4d6 hit on targets inside buildings. A lot of buildings can only take 12 hits in one go before they collapse. On 4d6, your average number of hits is going to be 14. If there's an enemy unit hiding inside a building, you can just collapse that building and destroy the entire unit that's hiding inside. That just about wraps up the unit overview, but before we get into the strengths and weaknesses, I want to clear up any possible confusion there might be around the rocket mortar concerning its ability, or should I say inability, to fire long range. You see, the rocket mortar counts as a heavy howitzer, and howitzers in bolt action have two ranges. They've got their direct fire range and their indirect fire range. In the case of a heavy howitzer, its direct fire maximum range is 72 inches. So when you're firing the rocket mortar directly, you can't fire it 72 inches. It can't be fired long range. That means it can't be fired over half range. So actually, the maximum range of your rocket mortar is 36 inches when fired directly. But it's very important to understand that the range value of this unit is not halved. So your half range doesn't become 18 inches and the long range is 19 to 36. No. You always fire in your short range and you can't fire in your long range. So there's no long range to hit modifier when shooting the rocket mortar because it can't physically shoot at long range. I think that's important because a lot of people that I've seen talk about this unit presume that its range is halved. No, it still technically has a 72 inch range. Its short range is still technically 36 inch range. It just is not physically allowed to shoot at long range. Another bit of confusion which may come up is regarding the indirect fire aspect. Can this unit fire indirectly? Because its indirect fire minimum range is 36 inches and its maximum is 84. Or do you now say that its maximum range is 84, so it's half range, short range? Don't worry about it, okay? On page 9 of the Warlord FAQ and errata, they cover this exact issue. Sturmtiger can only not fire long range when firing directly. So that means it has a 36 inch range direct fire. When you come to firing the weapon indirectly, it can shoot as normal. But essentially, when you're looking at the Sturmtiger's range, it has 0 to 36 to direct, and then it has 36 to 84, whatever the max range of a heavy howitzer is, and that is not affected by the rocket mortar special rule. So you can go absolutely ham and fire this thing indirectly till the cows come home with no issues whatsoever. But with all of that cleared up, now let's get into some strengths and weaknesses of this unit. One of its greatest strengths is just how bloody durable it is. A lot of opponents are not going to be prepared to deal with a super heavy tank. In my experience, and yours may differ, so please do let me know down in the comment section, but most people build to deal with medium armor or below. That is because in a lot of bolt action starter sets, you encounter medium tanks like the Panzer III, Panzer IV, stuff like that. And also, when you get to the competitive meta of bolt action, light armor is the order of the day. Cheap armor that you can throw around, it's like 70 to 100 points. Things like the Panzer II are fantastic. So having such a heavy tank with 11 damage value, for many armies, they simply won't be able to fight it. If you've got a medium anti-tank gun or you're relying on medium AT guns in your army and someone comes along with a damage value 11 plus tank, you can't physically damage it at long range because your medium anti-tank gun has a pen value of +5, but that's -1 when you're shooting at long range, so it becomes pen +4. Well, if you try and shoot an 11 plus tank with pen plus 4, even if you roll a 6, the maximum roll you can make is a 10. You don't match or beat that 11 plus armor value, so you just bounce off completely. So having a super heavy tank is going to add a massively different dynamic to the game, and a lot of opponents are really going to struggle to be able to just interact with it. And so your Sturmtiger is going to have a lot of opportunities to just go around and flatten things if the opponent doesn't really have anything that can deal with it. In addition, like we said before, the weapon that this thing comes with is really, really strong. Heavy howitzers are deadly, and the fact that this one has so many buffs to its already incredibly good weapon is nothing to turn your nose up at. And having the forward-facing hull-mounted MMG as well means that you're not overly reliant on that single one shot. I mean, yeah, you want that one shot to do something, of course, but at least you've got an MMG that allows you to be able to spray a few rounds out and maybe pick off an enemy model here and there. But I think the MMG very much is the backup. The forward rocket mortar, I think, it has a number of strengths itself. It essentially makes buildings impossible for your opponent to go into, because if he does go into a building, you're just going to hit that building on like a 3, maybe a 4 if there's some light cover, but you're going to hit that building on like a 3, and then you're just going to flatten it. Statistically, you flatten it every time, so your opponent won't be able to take advantage of a lot of the hard cover and buildings and huts that often dot around the battlefields of bot action. Another really big deal, big buff about the Sturmtiger is that reroll to damage. That is massive. If you're someone who plays games like Warhammer 40k, you'll be used to rerolls for days. But in games like Bolt Action, they're very rare. Few and far between. I can't even think off the top of my head of another example of a unit that gets inbuilt rerolls. So having that in there definitely sets the Sturmtiger apart and makes it just so deadly. Wounding any infantry in the game on 2s rerolling, it's just going to destroy them. There's going to be nothing left but bloody pulp and a smoking crater. However, it's not all sunshine and lollipops for the Sturmtiger. It does have some, unfortunately, massive Achilles heels that it has to overcome. The first one is the fact that its weapons are all fixed. They're forward facing. This means that often the Sturmtiger is going to have to move to get on target. By moving, it will incur a -1 to hit penalty. It's going to have to pivot. Secondly, and possibly more importantly, it makes the tank a little vulnerable. Sure, it's armor 11 plus, but if you can't have your armor facing one way and then turn your turret, make sure that you can stay nice and protected, what often you find is you end up exposing your flanks. If someone comes at you with 2 or 3 anti-tank units from a few different directions, you won't be able to keep your front armor facing all of them. And suddenly, you might find, combined with the fact that the Sturmtiger itself is often going to be in half range to shoot, so your opponent's going to start being in half range, you might find that your opponent is in half range and is hitting you on your side armor. Suddenly, those medium anti-tank guns aren't such a little nuisance anymore. Suddenly, they're a big deal. If someone has a medium anti-tank gun and they hit you on your side armor in half range, they are going to penetrate you on a 5 or 6. That is 33% of the time. They're going to glance you on a 4. So 50% of the time, they're going to do something to your Sturmtiger, something permanent, something lasting. Even if it's just putting extra pins on it, that's a nightmare for a unit like this. And they might even knock you out. So the forward mounting weapons does cause the Sturmtiger to have some serious vulnerabilities. And frankly, that's not good when you're looking at a unit which is so points intensive. The Sturmtiger is possibly at the very upper end of units that I would consider usable in a 1000 point game. They are still going to cause you to have to cut other areas of your list. You're only going to have 520 points left over. We start taking into account the mandatory officer that you're going to need to take as well. You're not going to have many points for the rest of your list. But if you stick to things like inexperienced infantry, maybe some cheap weapon teams like an anti-tank rifle or something like that, you'll probably be able to get 7 or 8 dice, maybe 9 dice in the bag, which means you're not going to have such a big dice disparity in a standard game where most people are bringing sort of 10, 11 or 12. So you can fit this thing in a standard point game, which is cool, but it is going to drain away from the rest of your list. It's going to have to do some heavy lifting, and if it's vulnerable or it gets knocked out because someone gets a cheeky bazooka shot on its side armor and it hasn't got shoot stun and all that kind of stuff, it's a big problem. So it's a big unit that's going to cause a lot of points to get sunk into it. It's going to drain points from elsewhere in the list, and the fact that it does this and then has vulnerabilities, it's not ideal to say the least. Overall, I think that the Sturmtiger is a very, very cool unit. It definitely wins the rule of cool, and it can be used in a 1,000-point game. However, I would suggest it's probably one of those units that you bring as part of a meme list, as part of a fun list at 1,000 points. And if you really want to be able to field it without feeling like you're hamstringing yourself, you probably want to look at 1250 points or above. It's definitely something that, if it hits, is going to hurt, but it's going to require a bit of skill to make sure that you don't open up its vulnerabilities, and you're going to need to make sure that it's getting at least a couple of good hits a game for it to feel like you're getting your money's worth. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Have you ever used a Sturmtiger? And if so, how did it perform? Also, do you like this unit, or do you prefer some of the other German classic big tanks like the Panther, Tiger, and of course the King Tiger as well? Finally, if you've got any other units that you really, really want me to take a look at and review, please let me know and I'll do my best to include them in another installment of this series. Hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button. It really does help with the YouTube algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, and they have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a big shout out to Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Thank you guys so much. Your incredible generosity is a massive part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time, and it is a big driving force behind the channel. But I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.